Well, what is up, the way podcast listeners? We're back here in the studio live. Well, actually, if you're listening to this now, it's probably not live. It's probably been recorded and posted out, but we are live right now. But in the studio, I have our one and only college pastor, Travis Bailey. Would you like to say hello to the people?
Yeah, what's up, guys? Excited for the conversation.
Yes, and we also have a super awesome, really cool, fun guest who you may have heard at the Way this past Sunday. But we have Joshua Broome. Joshua, you want to say hi to the people?
Hey, I'm so glad to be here. Can't wait to see what this conversation holds.
Yeah. I just wanted to start off asking the question to Joshua. Have you ever been to Lubbock before? Is this your first time in Lubbock?
First time time in Lubbock.
What are your thoughts? Where does it fall on, I know you just got back from Portland, Oregon. How does it compare?
Yeah,
It's really similar to Portland.
Well, I would say, it's crazy. Portland, Oregon is the most diverse place and darkest broken place I've ever seen, but also has some of the most beautiful things, beautiful, the biggest mountains I've seen up close, so much culture, so much technology, all that stuff, but then also brokenness in a way and darkness in a way that I've never even seen in other countries.
Yeah. So how does Lubbock compare?
I mean,
we don't have mountains, but
he's like, and that's Portland.
Well, I've had a pretty skewed experience.
Yeah.
It's like I'm staying in a really dope Airbnb that you guys put me up in.
Shout out.
We went and ate good breakfast. We had a good workout, and we went to Indiana Ave and
He might even come back.
yeah.
I would
might
love to
even
come
say-
back. Yeah. So, but it's I had a phenomenal, solid, 8.5.
Let's go. We'll take it.
Man, so one of the things, seeing you step off the stage specifically at the 8 p.m., and then we chatted a little bit about that even this morning, but that was not just a moving moment for our crowd, but you were moved in that moment, and even you had mentioned that you think that moment will stick with you. So tell me what that was like for you, kind of for those who weren't there, what that moment was.
Yeah, all three services were powerful and unique, and God moved in an amazing way. But when I invited people to surrender their lives to Jesus, not because of something I was saying, but the heart posture in which I was inviting them to have because of what Jesus has done, and I just simply said, "Hey, I think there's something solidified in you when you respond physically to something that's happened inside of you spiritually." And I asked them, if you've made that decision to follow Jesus, raise your hand. And so many people raised their hands that I could barely speak. It hit me.
Yeah.
And I nearly started weeping on the stage, and my voice was cracking, and just so overwhelmed that God would use someone like me to
It's like
be
that
a
redemption.
conduit for his goodness. And it's it's not about me. But at the same time, we have a Father that loves us so much that he invites us in to play a part into his redemption story.
Yeah, man, to watch people, to watch darkness have the light of God invade it in a moment, and to watch people, the lights come on, and watch people take that step, or to watch people release things that they've been holding on to, which there's a lot of people that we got to talk with collectively as a staff last night, that the Lord really did do that, and to be able to watch that is like I think I mentioned to you even last night, it's like, why would you want to do anything else with your life?
Yeah.
It's so powerful. And what's crazy is because a lot of people, I think they're hearing this podcast and like, that's really great for this guy that travels and speaks all across the world. I'm pretty sure I'm probably not going to do that. But the thing is, it's like, no, that's supposed to be you as a business person. That's supposed to be you as a college student. That's supposed to be you as a school teacher. That's supposed to be you. Whatever you are doing, you are representing the light of Jesus.
Yeah, that our very existence is like we are. Second Corinthians 5:17 talks about that we're made new, and now we're not who we used to be. But also, if you keep reading, you see, okay, well, now you're not only saved from something, you're saved for something. And what you're saved for is to be an agent for change.
Yeah.
Our very existence is to share the gospel. We're called into the Great Commission, and we are to go into the chaos in which we were rescued from, so that uniquely we can use our story, because Romans 8:28, like, all means all.
Yeah.
All means all, and what that means is there's something that you've went through that maybe you're not proud of, that if you put it at the foot of the cross, that he's going to redeem it and reshape it, and he's going to allow you the gift of contextualizing a message, and you're going to have equity with someone that, you're like, I could never share this with someone, or how could God use this? There's going to be someone that's gone through the very thing that you've been delivered and rescued and healed from, to say, hey, God was with me in the middle of that, and now I'm on the other side of it, and it's going to be hard, but you're going to be okay.
Yeah, man. And that's one of the things, like you even mentioned, Wynn was so nervous sharing his testimony, but he did a great job sharing about how God had worked in his life. So shout out Wynn. I bet he's going to find out that he was mentioned in this podcast and he'll listen to it.
Yeah.
But so backing up a little bit. So that's a lot of us seeing God break through. But what about the person that they have not bought into the message of Jesus. They've not bought into God's teaching on sexual ethic. Definitely. Man, there are people, and I know this has to be a fact because of how rampant pornography is and how many people are watching it. There are people that are going, wait a second, you got to literally live out my fantasy.
Sure.
And you're telling me that was a bad thing?
Yeah.
And they would really kind of be like, I wish I could do that in real life, but I have to settle for a screen.
Yeah.
And you got to be the guy that actually did it. And so you're telling me that somehow that led to problems? And there's people in the world that they're going, I mean, as long as it was consensual, then it sounds kind of awesome, to be honest with you.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think there's a week that goes by that I don't get asked that question. But the reality is pornography is built on force, fraud, and coercion. Like it doesn't exist within the industry. It is contingent on it. Every single girl that's there's something broken that's happened in their life that causes them to believe that this is the only thing that they can do, or maybe this is the only way that they can do something in which their value can equate to some kind of compensation so they can live their life. But yeah, man, it's like broken people doing broken things.
And I don't know the answer to this question. So did you have people, like, whenever you were kind of within that industry and you had people that knew about you and knew of you, you're in Hollywood, I believe, at that time?
Yeah.
People walking up to you and just being like, "Oh, you're the man."
Oh yeah. I mean that I remember, specifically being in Hollywood or being in Vegas, people would come up and, ask for my picture, ask for my autograph, stuff like that. And so it's like, this is 2006 or 2012.
Yeah.
So it's like it's crazy to say this even, but like DVD was still relevant, and because DVD was relevant, there would be DVD stores where I would do signings in, and that would be a lot of like the fan interaction.
Yeah.
And in retrospect, it's like so strange to think about.
Sure.
People asking, "Hey, can I take your picture? Can I take your can I get your autograph?" But I mean, I think we are wired to desire what we don't have, but the thing that our heart wants most is Jesus. But that's the way that pornography works so well, because it does work in a way. It provides us with something, but it doesn't provide us the thing that we want.
Yeah. So that's one of the things I also wanted to press in on is, so you had mentioned that the reason why so many go to it is because, at least in a fabricated way, it does work for a time.
Well, yeah, I mean,
how does that work?
Well, yeah, I mean, in the same way that drinking enough beer, or if you are medicating or suppressing a feeling that you want to go away, it works. Pornography works, drugs work, but the thing is, it doesn't deal with the root issue. Because pornography is a fictitious representation of intimacy. It's two people, in the same way that, like, I love the movie Inception, and there's like crazy like fight scenes in there, and there's these guys in an elevator, and like time stopping, and they're going upside down, and all this stuff's happening. You don't see that and think, well, some random people wandered into an elevator, and that would happen if I saw it, somewhere. There was choreography, there was editing, there was CGI, there were paid actors, there was rehearsals, there was a director telling them what to do, and then there was someone editing the final product. So pornography is a fictitious representation of sex, and it is a fantasy. It is a fantasy. There's this research around something called supernormal stimulus. So it's Dr. Tinbergen. He won a Nobel Peace Prize. He won a Nobel Prize for his research, and he studied this specific group of butterflies, and he studied the female butterfly, and he created this beautiful, brighter, better, more vibrant version of this female butterfly, which was artificial. And the male butterflies tried to mate with the female, and then they stopped interacting with the female, the real females, and then they started fighting among themselves, and all of a sudden they started dying out. It was because the thing that they desired wasn't real. And when you desire something that's real, you become insatiable for that thing, yet you can't be satisfied because it's a depiction of reality, but it's not reality. Because what you're doing is, like, I mean, just doing the scenes, it's like you're not doing that for pleasure or for intimacy. You're doing it for camera, and you're being told what to do. And the byproduct of that is disconnection on your part because you're trying to perform for a camera. And then, like, the guys are taking erectile dysfunction medication, the girls taking, like, numbing lubricant. And, you know, it's this very fake, empty interaction where it's not two people who are attracted to one another having sex and someone's just capturing the moment.
Yeah.
It's so far from that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so for you personally, was it pretty much from the first time that you sensed your own soul being robbed, or was it kind of like over time you felt that kind of it was building up towards you were like, oh my gosh, I've dug myself into a pit? And of course, like diving into the depression that you were in, and here in a moment, I want to dive into that more. But what was that like for you as far as getting to that place?
Yeah, I mean, so you're literally suppressing reality. And because there's so much shame involved.
From like the first time?
Yeah. I mean, well, because I do that, and it ruins everything I'd spent my entire life working for. And I feel humiliated, and I hurt my mom. So the byproduct of me doing this one film was that I lost everything I'd spent the last 9 years.
And that first film was just kind of, you were not planning towards that at all. That just happened.
No, not at all. I mean, I did one film, and it was
an opportunity was given to you. You decided to take it in the moment.
Yeah, and I thought, and I think naively, I touched on this last night, but it's like when you don't count the cost, it's going to cost you more than you were willing to pay.
Yeah. When you said when you don't have a reason to say no, you'll end up saying yes to things that you shouldn't say yes to.
Yeah, so I mean, that
was really good.
So I didn't have a biblical theology, and I didn't have, a father to have a conversation with me. So when you don't have guidelines and guardrails in your life, you go off the rails and you crash and you end up broken and beaten up. And yeah, I mean, for me, like seeing pornography for the first time at 13, it created this curiosity, and I thought, well, the things that I saw, in that pornography, I thought, well, I feel unloved. Maybe this is what love is, and maybe if I participate in that, I will feel the thing that I don't.
So, and was that like immediate that you realized this isn't it, or did it just take some time?
Regarding like watching porn?
No, just like whenever you actually stepped into that industry and kind of like the pit of you saying like, I felt like my life was ruined and I was in this broken place, to know the broken place that you were in.
Yeah.
Was that almost immediate, or was that over time?
I mean, you guys can use this or cut it, but I'll just say, I just want to paint a really clear picture of that. You are the most exposed that you could ever be. You are doing something that's supposed to be intimate, but like often you're not even making eye contact, and the eye contact that you think is being made, it's the girl looking at the camera. She's not looking at the person.
Yeah. And
because it's so disconnected, the byproduct of that is you just feel so ashamed, and because you're so exposed, and like there's someone holding a mic over your head, there's someone holding a light underneath you, there's 10, 15 people on set, there's generally some random person watching that asked to be there, and it's like you're putting on a show, and you feel like an animal. And I think there's this movie, Redeeming Love. It's a Christian movie, and there's this scene in there that just makes me weep. So she was essentially like working in a brothel. She meets a guy. They have this relationship. And then while in this relationship, she's so uncomfortable existing outside of the chaos. All she knows is she wants to go back, and she doesn't understand why. And then when she does the thing that she, felt like she had to so that she could feel some kind of normalcy in her life. There was so much regret. And man, she's in this river and she has rocks and she's trying to wash her body, and she's not trying to wash filth off her body. She's trying to wash it off her soul.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
every time I would do that, I would be in a shower trying to do the same thing, because you are so exposed, and it's nothing like you think it would be. It's like, well, like, how'd you not love doing that? It's like, man, it's so much different than most people think it would be. And then the reality of that is, because you're living that way, you're not going to date a normal person. A normal person's not going to date you. And even having friendships with people, maybe you would have situational friendships where, had friendships with like actors and athletes and stuff like that. But, we didn't spend time together like one-on-one. I didn't have like deep friendships outside of people who are in the industry, because you're doing something, so almost like against normality or against nature, that you can only identify with someone who's going through what you're going through, and you end up in these relationships with, I was dating someone who was in the industry, and I remember sitting at dinner, and I'm sitting there with the girl I'm dating, and a friend of mine was sitting there with the girl he was dating, and I had filmed a scene with the girl he was dating, and he had filmed a scene with the girl I was dating the same week, and we're sitting there saying that we're in a monogamous relationship, and
Right.
and that's just work. So when you suppress reality, there's a cost to that.
Yeah.
And there's a chaos that happens into your mind and your soul, and that darkness, it just gets deeper and deeper and deeper. And I shared this, there's 35 people who've committed suicide or overdosed that I know personally, that were my friends since I've been out of the industry. I've been out of the industry almost 11 years. And that's like, oh, well, if we think about pornography in the way that, we think OnlyFans and all this stuff is this gigantic industry, that's not the industry that I was in. It was pretty much just this mainstream production and so it was a smaller industry. So imagine, a mid-size high school,
Yeah.
and 35% of the people that you went to school with committed suicide or overdosed. Like,
Wow.
let that sink in. And then when those people committed suicide, what the industry did as a reaction is they made a compilation film of all their films, and then essentially they monetize off of the thing in which caused the chaos that led them to take their life. Because out of the 35 people, 33 of them, they weren't in the industry. They they left the industry, they tried to do something else, they tried to make a life for themselves, but they hadn't experienced the hope of Jesus. And without the hope of Jesus, there's no hope. If there's no hope, there's no purpose. So it's like they tried really hard, but the world kept telling them, hey, I know that you're saying you've changed and you're going by this different name, but that's not who you are. Send people, here's the picture, here's the video on the phone that I have. This is who you are. And it's like that's 35 people. There's 500 people that have died of overdose, suicide, murder. They've lived in a way that's super reckless, and they've died. Every roommate I've ever had but one dead. So that's the reality of that. That is how broken the industry is.
Yeah.
And I would just say, with all the love in my heart, the probability of you watching pornography and that being a person that's taken their own life because of that industry, and you're extracting pleasure from pain that was so deep and so dark that led them to take their life, is a very real probability.
Yeah, I think it's like you people that are in the industry feel like there's something to use instead of someone to love.
Yeah, it teaches, we are to use people and, love things.
Yeah.
In contrast, we're supposed to love people and use things.
Yeah, and whenever you use people, they feel used.
Yeah, and
that's what happens. And
and then consuming it also, it's like it teaches you to objectify people, and the practicality of that is, it lives out in your life, where it's like you're not capable of being a good friend because you're selfish, and you think that it's like a value exchange. Like the value proposition between your friendship is, I'm extracting whatever I can out of you, but because I see you as a product to use, then if you were to ask me for something that doesn't benefit me, I'm going to be very unlikely to do that because that's not in the way in which I see our relationship.
Yeah, and so say again, because I want to go to, so that's you in the industry, and I want to go to the person that is watching on the screen, because they're going, well, yeah, I get that for them, but they chose that, and hey, it's out there, and I think it's good, fine to watch. You know, I remember being in a class where a professor, I was a freshman in college, and it was my psychology, like my freshman psychology class in college, and he said, yeah, I think that porn and masturbation, that's how you get good at sex. And he just said that kind of on the fly, and I was following Jesus at this point.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't think so. I was like, I think there's something off there.
Yeah.
But a lot of people, they have these false views, and man, I would say that not only are they learning to objectify people around them, but they're actually using their own selves.
Yeah, I mean, the Bible says that sexual immorality is sin against your own body. You know, and if you're in a relationship with Jesus, as the verse continues, it tells us that we were bought at a price. Our body's not our own.
Yeah.
So, I mean, even from a secular standpoint, it's like, why is pornography detrimental to watch? Well, you are, number one, 94% of pornography contains violence. 50% of divorces in America, pornography is the primary catalyst for the divorce. And
Which is crazy. That's a crazy stat.
Yeah. And then you look at, so then if you look at that, so that is a primary contributor to fatherlessness, and homes without a father in them are the best predictors of, like, if you think of a primary problem in this world, it all stems from homes that grew up, without a father in them. So like that's contributing to that, but also it's like in a real way, it contributes to trafficking. It without the demand,
sex trafficking.
Yeah, without So without the demand and the ideology that it teaches, that here's the reality: the cartel is now saying, why will we sell drugs? We can sell a child over and over and over again. Why would we take the risk and spend the time to get drugs and to distribute them and all this, and we can just sell a child time after time after time? This thinking, it didn't come out of nowhere. Mm-hmm. It's taught from pornography, that you can sell people, that you can extract value from people, and this is okay. And it's because it's so normative in this world, it's why it's everywhere.
Yeah.
Like the thing in which, like, OnlyFans, like porn consumption went up 1,600% during COVID.
Dang.
And it's because people were looking for.
I didn't realize that. 1,600%.
1,600%.
Wow.
1,600%.
Is that from Barna?
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
And so it's like, and then from 2016 to today, Barna released new data across the board. By people who identify as followers of Jesus, porn consumption's up 400%. And I don't think that more people are consuming it. I think it's become so normative that it's so easy to sit around a table and say, yeah, me too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because you don't have to look for it. It's looking for you. Like, average age of exposure 3 years ago was 11. Today it's 8.
Yeah.
And 84% of the time when kids 15 and under are exposed to it, it's like secondhand exposure. So
that's my story. Yeah.
Yeah. So either someone showed it to someone, or you were on an unprotected device looking for something other than pornography, and you find pornography.
Yeah. And so it's contributing to so many problems, but specifically, I know that you're passionate about talking about mental health and porn consumption, and that there's a link there.
Yeah, it's so interesting. So during the Civil War in London, there was really like the printing press really taking off in a way that had not happened yet. And then they were sending pornography to the soldiers during the Civil War, and then they were seeing so much detriment there. This is when they first invited chaplains to go visit the soldiers during the Civil War.
Yeah.
And it wasn't because they were mourning the death of one another, that pornography was impacting their frontal lobe to the extent where it was it was like so disabilitating to them, and that they weren't doing the thing in which they were, there to do.
Wow.
They didn't care about the person to the left or the right. And specifically when it impacts the frontal lobe, it impacts your ability to be resilient. So when something is difficult and you're going to push forward, even though there's opposition, you're less likely to do that. And if you look at, the most normative characteristic of someone who's struggling with addiction, when there's chaos, they tune out. Like no matter how deep, how dark it is, no matter what's going on in their life, their reaction to something like that is just to tune out.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm not going to run. I'm not going to freak out. I'm just going to tune out because I've trained myself to disconnect from the hard things.
It's like a numbing factor.
Well, yeah, I mean that's what pornography does. It numbs you from reality, and where because love's hard. I mean, it's like, being in a relationship, being in a marriage, it's hard. Like love and lust are polar opposites.
It is. It's hard for everyone except for maybe my wife. So she's got to have a really easy time, I think.
I love it. I love it.
You make it so easy.
It's true. No, Carrie's probably not going to listen to this podcast. That's why I said that. It is, man. And okay, so kind of, what would you say to the person? Because we get to talk with people, and Ethan and I could share stories, and Aaron, who's across the glass over there, gets to talk with people a lot about people that are stuck in lust, whether that be falling in a relationship after relationship into sexual sin, or even more so, pornography is the number one issue I would say we talk to people about, which is no shock to you, especially with the stats that you said. Christians, 92%.
92% of 18 to 24-year-old men and 67% of 18 to 24-year-old women.
That is like so many people.
Yeah.
Like looking across the room, just on the stats alone. You're like,
so it's
wow.
like nine out of 10, like 9 out of 10 guys, 7 out of 10 girls.
Right, and that makes sense as far as the conversations that I have with people. Unfortunately, it's kind of, in my mind, it's not, has this person ever, but how long has it been since the person has lived in porn?
And I would just push, just gently push into people's lives a little bit in that, to the person that says they are not addicted to pornography or they're not wrestling with lust, according to the Sermon on the Mount, watching Bridgerton and watching pornography is not different because it both impacts your heart. And
the media that we consume that we go is clean. The Lord goes, that's not clean.
Well, but it's like if there's like, even romance novels and so it's like if it's a depiction of sex, that's what pornography is. Like pornography is a depiction of sex.
Yeah.
So whether it's audio, whether it's, like in Mesopotamia, 2000 BC, it's etched on caves. Like,
isn't that crazy?
This is not like a new thing.
Yeah.
Like you look at Corinth, you look at Ephesus, like, sexual immorality is not a new thing. They literally had a temple and statues built to these things.
And you had sex with prostitutes to worship. These gods.
Yeah. And
that's why when someone says the culture's just way worse than it's ever been, I'm like, I don't know. I've read Corinthians before.
And I think, it's like, I mean, obviously this is like a whole other conversation, but when you look from Genesis to Revelation, every time there is, God essentially giving people over to sexual immorality, and there's an uptick in that. What goes hand in hand with that is abortion, which is child sacrifice. So time after time after time, it goes hand in hand, because if you're going to objectify a person and have meaningless sex, of course the byproduct of that meaningless action is a meaningless creation.
Oh man.
So it's like that. I mean, that's the reality. So it's like pornography doesn't just impact, man, you shouldn't do it. It changes the way that you see people, because sex is the most beautiful, like, connectivity that God is inviting us into from, a man and a wife. That connectivity, it's oneness and connectivity, and it's beautiful, and it's a picture of Christ in the church. It's a
and the
gift.
Spiritual intimacy that we're supposed to have.
Yeah. So that's why it's like it's like people are like, well, what about this? What about this? What about this? Well, if it's not furthering your intimacy regarding oneness, well, there's only one way to be oneness. It's to literally be connected. So anything outside of that, I would argue, would fall under the banner of sexual morality. Mm-hmm. Why? Because if the entire objective for sex is connection, then anything outside of that connection in real time in real life is just creating disconnection.
So what would you say to the person? All that to build towards this question. Hey, I'm stuck. I hear everything you're saying, and man, I see more information maybe that I didn't know. I think a lot of the people we talk to, it's like when they're stuck in this stuff, and we start to share these facts. But I don't think it actually changes how they feel. It just gives some data behind it.
Yeah.
Because they sense the brokenness of it, and so for the person that's in this broken place, they go, "I don't know if I can ever get free." What would you say to that person?
Yeah. Well, I'll preach because I'm a preacher, you know. So, but I mean, the reality, like Jesus defeated death. So you're gonna put your porn addiction and say that's a bigger crutch than death, you know. So it's like the answer is no. But I think, you know, if you look at like, why does my story carry so much weight in culture? You know, there's this meme that's attached to like my name that has gone like crazy viral on like TikTok and then back in the day Vine and all this stuff. And I use it to point people to say, hey, this is who I used to be. This is who I am now. And I just share that to say the reason that my story is like so crazy is because in the world, in America, but in the world, we've made sex a god. And what is an idol? It's something in which we give our worship to. If it's something that takes our attention off of God, then the Bible calls that idol worship.
Yeah.
So to the person that's struggling with that, man, you say, fix your focus. Like I have to focus on what I focus on. And if I change what I focus on, if I focus on Christ, he's going to tell me not a dot, not an iota of my word has passed away till it's all fulfilled. You know, he's going to tell you, 2 Timothy 3:16, like all of my word is God breathed and it's good for teaching, rebuke, and reproof. There's things that the Bible says that I'm called to allow to dismantle and destroy the wrong thinking that I have so that I can see clearly. So Romans 12:2 we were talking about yesterday. I'm either going to be conformed by the world or I'm going to be transformed by the renewing of my mind. So what does that mean? Well, there's lies that I believe that I need to put on the table. And I think for a lot of people, they go through this process of they either rationalize, they minimize, or they deflect.
Yeah.
So like when I say rationalize, it's like, well, I try to make it not a big deal, and well, I'm doing good in this area of my life, so maybe this is not such a bad deal.
Yeah.
And Jesus calls us into, no, I'm Lord over everything. And either I'm Lord over your life or you are, and we make a terrible Lord because we're broken. So it's like you can't rationalize it. And then if you minimize it, if you try to say, hey, it's not a big deal, well, where's that going to lead you? It's gonna cost you more than you thought. And if I'm 5 degrees off, like we were talking about this morning, if I'm going from New York to California and I'm 5 degrees off, I'm going to end up in Canada. Like,
yeah, those aren't exactly close.
Right. Yeah. And it's like, how do I do it? And it's like, man, again, thinking about Peter. So Peter, John 21, he's interacting with Jesus for the first time since he denied him to his face. He denied him, and he's gone back fishing because he thought, okay, I'm a fisherman, so I'm gonna go back to fishing. And then Jesus has this interaction with him, and he asks him 3 times, "Do you love me? Do you love me? Do you love me?" But prior to that, he's making breakfast on the beach, and in the Greek New Testament, we see this word anthrakia twice. The first time we see it was when he denied Jesus for the first time at this fire. It means burning coals.
Yeah.
And the second time we see it is when Jesus is making breakfast. And sometimes Jesus needs to bring us back to the place where we were broken so he can fix us.
Yeah.
The way that, your smell is so interconnected to our memory. And Jesus is saying, hey, do you remember what happened? And then how does he respond? In the Greek, he says, do you agape me? He's like, no, I phileo you. Do you agape me? No, I phileo you. And he's like, well, do you even phileo me? And he says, yes. Agape, the totality of love. He's saying, I can't commit to that. I blew it.
Yeah.
And then he's like, okay, well, are you willing to meet me there? Do you phileo me? And then his response is what? Well, go feed my sheep.
Yeah.
Why? Because that's who you are.
Mm-hmm.
So allow God's love through Christ in the Holy Spirit allow you to know that you're loved and you're not what you do.
Yeah. And how many, just for so they can hear from you, how often do you hear stories, or have you even maybe personally had interactions with men who and women who, but I'm assuming most guys probably. You speak at a lot of men's events.
Yeah.
So obviously, I think this applies to women as well. But just for your personal experience, I'm guessing it's probably mostly men that talk to you about their porn addiction. And so, how many times and how many people have you seen actually get free by the power of God?
Hundreds of thousands.
Wow. So freedom's possible.
Yeah.
Freedom is possible.
Yeah,
If you're a student, we want you to know freedom is possible. You can walk in the freedom of Jesus. We've seen God break people free.
Yeah, I mean, but like, what is, it's going to cost you something.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, what do you have to do? Well, you have to do what you have not yet done. So number one, you need to tell somebody. Find someone that loves Jesus and loves you, and say the thing. And I'll just say this. This is going to be uncomfortable, but when you confess your sin to someone, if I say, man, I did it again. I did that thing we were talking about, did it again.
Mm-hmm.
The depth of your confession is going to impact the level of your freedom. So
Yeah.
if I say, hey, I went to this website, this is what I looked up, I masturbated, I felt terrible about myself, I tried to go to bed, I thought about it for an hour, and then I actually went back and did it again, and I feel sick to my stomach. I don't want to stay stuck anymore. Please help me.
Yeah. Yeah, man. And that's one of the things that I like to tell guys. I've heard this so many times since I've been in ministry. They'll go, oh, man, me and a couple of the guys, we were trying to have accountability. And, man, I don't know. They just quit checking on me. Yeah. And I'm like, whoa. Yeah. Accountability is you confess.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. You don't go, Joshua and I, we had this thing where we're going to check on each other. And, man, he just hasn't even checked on me. It's like, what? Yeah. You confess. Yeah. You confess. That's on you.
And I think on the other side of that, though, how you respond does matter. Because like if you confess to me and I say, man, you did that again, dude. Let's pray about it. If that's how I respond, like, is that going to equate to change?
Yeah.
Because if I say, dude, you said that was really impacting your life in a negative way. You and your girlfriend that you were really committed to, you guys, that relationship ended, and you were trying to get free with that so that you guys could sort some things out. Like, you were really committed to that, and that really hurt you. So can you help me understand, why did you say yes to something that you were committed to saying no to?
Yeah.
Because if you can introspectively ask yourself why, not because
get to the root issue.
Yeah, but you know this as a dad. It's like if you tell your kids not to do something, that's not helpful. You got to tell people what to do. Mm-hmm. So the way that works regarding a porn addiction, it's like, man, what in me is broken that I've used porn as a Band-Aid to cover up? Because porn is not the problem. It's a, there's a subsidiary problem that's in the roots of my life. There's brokenness, there's trauma, there's something that happened to me, there's something that I've done that I felt ashamed about, that I didn't know how to process. Maybe I felt rejected, and then porn met me in that moment, and it felt good, and the bad feelings that I felt went away. So I keep searching for that thing that's going to suppress the bad feelings that I have. And then there's real symptoms of the byproduct of you consuming pornography, but the porn is not itself. It's like, if I change your tires and your brakes were blown up, it's like, it's the brakes are still not going to work. Yeah. It's not the tread on the tire. It's the axles.
Yeah, there's something
on the
else
car.
going on.
So it's like I got to look into the problem. What is the actual root of the problem?
Yeah, yeah, and it's similar with things like, and again, this is another conversation for another time. But having anxiety and issues that go with that is something that it's been part of my story. And if someone just says, "Oh, I have anxiety," pray for my anxiety. It's really what you're saying is pray over whatever it is that's causing my physiological response or mental health response to be what it is. But it's not anxiety is the byproduct. Yeah. And I would say it's similar with porn. Porn it's the thing that you're going to address the root issue.
Yeah, because
address the root issue. Ask yourself why.
Yeah, because all your emotions are God given. Like they're good. Mm-hmm. But how you process your emotions are not always good.
Sure.
And if there's something in me or something happened to me that's causing me to incorrectly process my emotions that lead me to porn, I got to address the thing that's attached to that emotion.
Right. And I do think that accountability with other people. And then if you, we don't have time to talk through every single step, but if you are saying, I want to get free from this specific issue in my life of porn, and it's a thing that has a hold on you, just know that we would love to, as a staff, talk to you and help you take steps with the Lord and maybe start to ask some of those introspective questions as well. But for you, so, and this is the last thing I wanted to really talk about as we kind of get towards wrapping up here. A lot of people, they're like, with sin in general, but definitely with sexual sin. Yeah. They're like, you're telling me I'm going to go into a church and I'm going to say, hey guys, let me show you this thing that I've never heard any of you say. Right. I'm going to share that I have this struggle, that's one. I think the reason why so many people are asking you to come out and to speak and to preach and to share your stories, because so many other people in the crowd just don't have the boldness to do it. Yeah. They don't have the boldness to say, hey, here's the brokenness that has been in my life and God has redeemed it, because we're still trying to save face. So I do want to say, and ask the question and hear what you have to say, rather, on when you started to open up about this to people, like you become a Christian. What was it like being received or not received by the church? How did that play out in your life?
Yeah, I mean, so I have a ton of experience like in the leadership space. So, but just like, leaders go first. Yeah, so that was just something that was ingrained in me. So, and whatever I have, like reciprocity is something, again, that is from my childhood, where it's like, if my grandma makes buttermilk biscuits and they're amazing, the thing that makes the most sense to me is to find someone to share that with. Yeah. And, but yeah, I mean, even to this day, there's if someone's gonna bring me in to speak, it's like, let's make sure this guy's actually a Christian. Let's ask him a few questions, because there is this suspicion, and it doesn't happen as much as anymore because I've been doing this for a while, but
you don't want that like Kanye thing, like have Kanye come speak and then you relapse, it's even worse.
Man, wow. Yeah, absolutely. And I think like in a like in a real way though, it's like I think people are afraid of, like, I think that the series was so perfect because like grace is scandalous. The fact that God would use someone that was the primary leader against himself to write 66% of the New Testament is just like, how do you reconcile that? How do you look at David, who manipulated his leadership, and not only did he, essentially use his authority to get Bathsheba to have sex with him, and then she gets pregnant, and then he kills Uriah. That's the man that's, after God's own heart. Moses, killed a guy, and he's, this celebrated fixture. And it's like God uses broken people, and through their brokenness, he heals them, and he gets the glory. It's not about you. It's about someone being willing to hand themselves over to God, and he will use any and everyone, because each and every person is created in the image of God. So any and every person has the capability and the capacity to do great things for God, because that was what we were created for. Like, that's not like an anomaly. Like, your very existence means that you are a conduit for his goodness. So that's just true. But yeah, I mean, there's been plenty of times several years ago where, there was places that, I were not welcome. There were, there were opportunities where like people would have me on my podcast, but I would ask if I could speak at their church, and they're like, absolutely not. Yeah. And it's this idea, because sex is God in Western civilization. If sex is God and I did porn, then I must be, this I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's
so
just like
you had moments of rejection.
Certainly, absolutely.
So how did you not let that keep you from continuing to love the bride of Christ?
Yeah, I mean,
kind of press into like the classic, the church hurt thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was kind of beautiful in that, like, I didn't have a background of understanding that was a thing, and I always strive to have an independent dependency on Jesus. And if I had an independent dependency on Jesus, the church is a byproduct of who he is. And the church, it was less about one building or one organization. Like, that's the body of Christ. So for me, because all I knew is what I knew, I didn't have presuppositions about what had happened in the past. So that was never a part of my story. There were most certainly people that I trusted that hurt me that were in the church, but I just saw the brokenness in them, and like I didn't minimize the frustration or the pain that I felt, but it was never at the church. It was always at the individual because it all kind of brings me back to my dad. It's like, how do I have empathy for him? How do I forgive him? Well, I remember that he was 16 when I was born, and I think about how scared he was. It doesn't make it right, but God allows me to have empathy for him when I spent most of my life being frustrated with him. Because that's the gift of the Holy Spirit. That's the softness that it brings. But for me, I never was bothered by that because the call of my life that I was committed to wasn't contingent on a yes or no from a person. It was, I'm committed to this because God's called me to it.
And then so man, I think that's so good. You have this call on your life, and it's not contingent on people that, at least on the outside of a building, it says that they represent Jesus, the church.
The same thing. It's like something my wife, she's slow to speak. When she speaks, she's just like bars, like every time she says something. But someone said something to us like in a conversation, and she's like, well, at the end of the day, when you Google his name, you won't find the most true thing about him. The most true thing about him is that he's a son of the King.
Yeah.
Like my identity in Christ is the most important thing about me, and that's the most true thing about me.
And that's true of all of us, man.
Yeah.
If we are in Christ.
Yeah, if you're in Christ.
So what's a way that you were actually received by the church in a positive way? Like because obviously you were discipled. You in our conversation this morning even were mentioning people that really impacted your life. So because I think a lot of people, it can be easy to go, yeah, sometimes the church, they're just awful. But it's like, yeah, there's people that say they represent Jesus that they're not being a good representation. Yeah,
but also people are broken. It's like I like went,
and there are people that have the light of God shining through them.
Yeah, I mean,
at the same time,
in spite of their brokenness.
Yeah,
it's like I'm not the kindest person in the world all the time. You can like I have bad days, but how I respond to that, matters. But I would say, I give my life to Christ on a Sunday, and then on a Tuesday, I go to this church.
And you were at a church service when you gave your life to Christ, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
And then I go to that church, and I'm like, hey, is there a pastor I can talk to? I was like, I got a story to tell you, And I sit down with the executive pastor at this church in Raleigh, North Carolina, and I share with him my story. And he's like, man, I think that God's going to use your story in a big way, and I want to get you plugged in with this guy, Andrew. And Andrew, it's funny because I know ministry well enough to say, if I used to say he was a new guy on staff, so he had a lot of free time, which is an hilarious thing to say. But
I only work 1 hour a week.
Just
on stage.
Yeah, someone actually.
What do you actually do for a living?
Yeah. But there was this guy, Andrew, and he discipled me like 10 to 15 hours a week for about 2.5 years. And I used to say, well, he had all this time. He's like, I didn't have time. What I planned on doing when I met with you, I was going to give you a Bible, tell you to read John, and tell you to get plugged into a small group. Like, that was my plan. But the Holy Spirit convicted me. There was something about this man that I need to sit down with him and not only teach him how to read the Bible, but teach him how to teach the Bible and teach me how to study the Bible. And he gave me the gift of discipleship. And what that did, it undone things in me, and it called me out, and it called me in, and called me up to the man that I am today. And we still have conversations with regularity, but
that's awesome.
It was he didn't have time. He didn't have time, but like they didn't even have an internship program, and like a lot of time in, they were like, this guy's hanging around, we might as well put him to work, And I was there for a long time, and along the way there were opportunities that I wanted that I didn't get. There were jobs that I applied for that I was I didn't get, and then my plan for my life was that I was going to get my degree and teach at a church of maybe like 20-25 people, because like I wanted to teach the word, but I didn't want anyone to see me or know me. It's like I wanted to pastor and shepherd people. I wanted to plant my feet in a community and like really love on people and help them grow in their relationship with Jesus Christ and send
God
them
might
out.
have had just a little bit other plans.
But it's like when it's like when your plan doesn't line up with his plan, what do you do? You know, and it's like, and there's this word.
You go kicking and screaming is my
Yeah.
experience.
Yeah, it's like there's this word in Hebrew, anava, and it's kind of like this God ordained space. And in that space, you need courage to step into the space, but you need humility to stay in the space and think that, you know, you can never think, I'm going to make it. You know, I've never made it. We live in the not there yet
Yeah.
as followers of Jesus. So I say that to say it's sometimes pride looks like not being willing to do the thing that God has called you to because you don't see enough in yourself.
That's good, man.
It's like the thing that scares you, if you're called to it.
This might be the thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. And I love that the discipleship that you got is what really helped you to grow into what God was getting you ready for. And that's, man, that's what I pray that happens, you know, in our ministry. Like that's the, you know, we've been rapidly growing numbers wise over the last several years, but the number that me and Ethan and Aaron have been praying that God would allow to happen more and more is that people, the percentage of our people getting plugged into community, and that they would call each other into what God has, and call each other up, like you said, into stepping into being the person that God calls you to be.
Yeah.
Man, so that's so good. And
yeah, I mean, that's what the Bible, you know, in the same way, I think I said it yesterday, but in the same way that Moses, you know, God used Moses to lead his people out of Egypt, like God used the Levitical law to get Egypt out of them. And it's like, you know, why did they have, these like about tattoos and stuff like that? It's like, well, those things were contingent of pagan worship.
yeah,
So he was trying to remove them because hey, you were my chosen, set apart people, and I need to remove you from wrong thinking, and that there were behaviors that was tied to those wrong thinking. So I needed to unlearn some things so that I could learn what was most true, so that I could live in the way that I was designed to live.
yeah, man, that's so good. Might be a good place to
Yeah, definitely a good place to wrap
let
it up.
wrap up, man. Thank you for
For sure.
being here.
Yeah, it's my joy, man.
Yeah,
I love it.
Appreciate it. Yeah, thank y'all for listening this far. If anything in the conversation, man, like resonated with you and you want to talk with someone, that's what Aaron, Travis, and myself are. It's literally part of our job. So man, we would love to talk with you. I know that Joshua would too if he was, present in Lubbock more.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're just grateful that you came out and
then
and
would you
shared
tell people the book that you
Oh,
wrote?
yeah.
And that way maybe we can, if they want to.
Yeah, so the book 7 Lies That'll Ruin Your Life, and it's really, there was a one statement to what is it? Well, it's Romans 12:2.
Yeah.
It's essentially it's 7 lies from culture that leads to destruction, but there's 7 truths that supersede, eradicate, and destroy
That's awesome.
wrong thinking. So if you apply what is true to your life, it will undo the thing that those lies have done.
And you can get that pretty much on all
Amazon,
Yeah.
Barnes and Noble, Books a Million, all that stuff.
Awesome.
Anywhere you can find a book, he's there.
And I'll just say really quickly, it's like, man, if you're listening to this and it's like, how do I stop watching porn? If you're someone like that, it's like, hey, confess. Tell someone the thing that you haven't said out loud. Like yes, pray to God, but confess to one another. James 5:16. Maybe you're forgiven, but you're not healed. So tell somebody, take inventory of your life. What am I watching? What am I listening to? Because those things matter. Those things contribute to my behavior. And then I need to set boundaries in my life. For me, it was simple as I stopped taking my phone or my iPad into my room or my bathroom. After 6 months, I stopped. I still had urges to do things I shouldn't do, but I wasn't like, oh man, I want to watch porn. I'm wrestling with lust so bad.
Yeah.
Where it's like, if you distance yourself from the thing you don't want to do and make it more difficult to do,
Yes.
like that's practical.
Yes.
So, and then for some people, it's like, I need to delete apps. I need to go through, who am I following? If the people who I'm following, if it leads me to temptation, it's irresponsible for me to continue following those people.
Yeah.
So maybe delete an app, unfollow someone. Don't bring your phone into your room or your bedroom or your bathroom. Get an alarm clock. It's not a big deal. And it's like, well, that's inconvenient. Well, you spent so much time and so much effort in your sin. How much are you willing to do? How much do you want it? Like, do you truly want to be free? because you spent so long doing these things, you have to undo them.
Yeah.
So how much, does it mean to you?
And then I love the Sermon on the Mount when he says, blessed are the pure in heart, they shall see God. You want to see God in your life? Man, purify.
Yeah.
Let God consecrate you and take all these steps, man. That's good. So good. And we all need to take steps. So whatever step you need to take, whatever step we need to take, hey, take that step today to continue walking after Jesus.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely, man. Well, thanks again, Joshua, for coming out to middle of nowhere, Lubbock, Texas. Hope to have you back.
Red Raider land.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening. We'll catch you on the next episode and see you on Sunday night.
Yep.
Peace out.